All right, let's talk about assignment one. Um, you are going to do a documentary portrait for assignment one. And so, what that means is you are going to shoot a portrait of someone that you deem interesting to speak about. Um, Now, before we get rolling into this, there's a simple disclaimer I have to make. I am recording this in my office slash hangout room. And so you might hear some noises from my neighbors, or my neighbor's dogs. Sorry for the weird interruptions, if they happen. If not, great. So, like I was saying, you're going to do a documentary portrait. And in that documentary portrait, you are shooting a subject. I've got three examples of three different women that I shot for this idea that I wanted to present to you to help you think about it, figure out what it is. Um, you're shooting this in available light. So that means if you're shooting outside, sunlight's lighting your portrait. If you're shooting inside, window light or light coming through the door. Please shoot this in the daytime. If you shoot this at night, then you've got a special reason for it, which I will hear, because before you shoot this project, you're going to create an artist statement. And that artist statement is going to consist of who you're going to shoot, why you're going to shoot them, and where you're going to shoot them. You're going to tell me all of that in your statement that you will write and post, replying to this assignment on Canvas. And then you will also get a statement from your subject, which you will post with the photograph when you've done the assignment. What I wanted to show you here was not only my three examples of the people that I've shot to help you understand this, but I also wanted to show you a workflow that I use and that you might think of using if you're interested in. Now, we're in Lightroom, and I've brought in the three people that I shot for this. First being Monica, who is a gallery owner here in Long Beach. She works with an organization called Phantom Galleries, and she has a gallery in the mall that was almost looted in July when we had our riot night happen here. So this is Miss Monica, gallery owner, fine artist. She's a painter. Then this is Miss Julie Washington. She is a shamanic healer, and I shot a couple of different ideas of her, and you will see all of that. I'll walk you through why I did it and how I did it. And this is Linda and one of her goats, Bubbles. She is a urban farmer and costume designer. Her main gig is costume design, where she works on the Conan O'Brien show. And, she's done movies and such. She did one of the Superman movies as a costume designer. But her big thing, when she isn't doing the Hollywood thing, is urban farming and raising these goats and milking them and all the stuff it takes to be a farmer. I'll explain to you as you look at these images what's working, what's not working, why it's not working, etc., etc., and we'll go from there. So let's start this. Okay, I bring stuff in the Lightroom. When I shot this assignment, I I think most of what you're seeing here, I shot with two cameras. I shot with a Hasselblad, which is a medium format camera, and I shot with an 80 millimeter lens on it, which is equivalent to a 50 millimeter lens on a 35 DSLR. I love shooting with that camera. It's got a waist level finder. It's a fun camera to shoot with. And it's kind of a disarming camera to shoot with because I'm looking down. I'm not holding it up to my face or my eye and, sort of intruding on people in that way, or doing this thing that people find intrusive. There's a lot of times when I use that camera, people are like, "Oh, that's a beautiful camera. That's a interesting camera." So that is one of the good things about using it. Now, onto this workflow that I use. I bring the images into Lightroom. Let's look at one that we can do a little work on. For instance, I have this, it's been brought into Lightroom. I've rated them. They're in library right now. So we're going to click on the develop module. And first thing we're going to do, this one's overexposed. I don't know what I was thinking when I shot it, but I overexposed it. And so we're going to bring the exposure down on it to about there. That looks better. Right away, we can see it's got a little yellow action going. And so the overall skin tone is yellow. So I'm going to bring in some blue and bring the skin tone looking back a bit normal. I'm going to add a little magenta to help balance it out a bit. Now, there's a couple of things that we can do to it. You can see that she's sort of, as I shot this, she's at an angle. So if we want to correct that angle a bit, we can go to, the crop tool. We can turn it thusly and, straighten it up a bit, like using that line running down the middle. Let's go back to what it was. I kind of like this one just a bit tilted like that, but that's a bit too much. So I'm going to go back up here and tilt it just a little bit. I don't get tilted, but not that much. And then I'm going to crop in on it just a bit so that we don't see that black line to the left. Bring this down a bit on top. Bring this in just a bit to the right. And then we're going to hit the crop tool. And that's what it looks like. Moving on to the next image of Monica. The exposure down, and Monica's eyes are closed right here. So I'm not really crazy about this image. In this one, again, she's smiling, so her eyes have closed down a bit. She's kind of squinting, and it's not really a great, attractive image. Bring it down a bit, add a little to the contrast, bring down the highlights just a bit so we could take down that t-shirt some, open up the shadows a bit. And you see there isn't much you can do with the eyes because they're just squinting. So none of those three really work. Now I have this one over here, which I did some retouching on. I cleaned up around the neck, that sort of thing. Let me show you the original. Okay, so here's the original. And you can see in the original, her neck's got some issues going. She's got a few little minor moles and dark spots and little bumps. None of us have absolutely perfect skin. So she's got a couple of little things that I had to fix up. I'm going to show you how I do that. So we've got the original here. With the original, what I usually do in Lightroom is I'll do a few little quick retouching things, like I'll change the color balance a little, get it more where I'm interested in, So I add a little blue, I add a little red, I play with the exposure a bit, bring it up some, give it a little contrast, bring up the shadow area, right? Let's reset that so you could see. This is what it looks like out of the camera. This camera does a odd little thing where it gives me this green cast. So I'm gonna add a little magenta to get rid of that green cast. We got a little warming yellow thing happening, so I'm going to add some blue to get rid of that. Then I'm going to bring up the overall exposure just a tad. I'm going to bring up the contrast just a bit. I'm going to bring down the highlights because as you look at the white t-shirt, it's just glowing in the sun. It's cool that it's glowing. Then I'm going to bring up the shadows, the shadow detail a bit. So the eyes, the back of the neck, where you see that hair, I'm going to bring that up a bit. See some exposure in her locks. Makes for a more interesting looking image. I like this image because subject is front and center, and then the background falls off into shallow depth of field really quickly. And so I like how this is working. Then I've done a few little things in Lightroom. I'm going to hit Command E, which will open up the image into Photoshop. Hello, Command E, one more time. Sometimes it runs a bit slow. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. Now, the first thing I like to do in Photoshop when I'm going to do a little cleaning up is I add another layer. So I just go Command J, and you can label that layer if it helps you remember where you're working, which is always a good thing. So you double click on the layer, layer 1, and you just call it cleanups, UP. And so that reminds you that you're using that layer to clean up the skin. So at this point, I'm going to go over to my handy Wacom tablet and do a little. We're going to start out with spot healing brush, and then I'm going to bring the image up just a bit. Okay, so bring that up a bit. And now we're working with the spot healing. Now, some people don't really like the spot healing brush because they feel like it diffuses things a bit too much. But I think if you're using it in these small quantities, it's cool. So we just go through and we start cleaning up just these little imperfections here. Now, here's the thought. You don't want to make, in a documentary shot, you don't want to go for the perfect fashion glowy skin, but you also want to minimize things that can be distracting. So I'm going to go through, get rid of some of these joints, and I'm just going to do this dustling. I will probably have to speed this up so make the video way too long. Go to patch tool, and I'm going to do a few little patches right here. Boom. And so you see how that's working. You just use the patch tool, grab an area, clone it. So I'm just cloning out the little bits of stuff that's not really helping. So clean, clean. All right, let's bring it down a bit. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. So as you can see, you got your before, after, before, after. So that's just some little quick cleanup, right? You've done your cleanup. Now you're going to hit Command S for save, and that image is going to be saved back to Lightroom. And so here it is in Lightroom. It's number 3 because this is the 3rd time I've worked on it, and that is our image. I missed one little thing here, so I'm going to go to this brush, and I'm just going to right here on the forehead, I'm going to click on it, and it samples, and we're good. So that is one of the possibilities. All right. Once you've done that, you're going to now move that into a finish folder. Put it in at, because you're going to upload this to Canvas, you can put it in as small as, or you should put it in as small as, something like a 5x7 at 72 dpi, because it's going to be going up to Canvas. Now, that's that one. We've got this, and we've also got this. And I like this one a bit more. I like how Julie looks over here. She looks beautiful. And I like what's going on in the background with the dappled light. Okay. And then for this one, this is cool, but I don't really dig it so much as the main shot. I like something like this a bit more. No, not that. She looks crazy there. No, not that. I like this one as the main shot for her. Gonna do a little color correction. Yeah. And we're gonna bring up the exposure a bit. Bring up the contrast just a bit. Take some of the red out of her. And let's see how that goes. Take down the red a bit. Take down the orange. That green is kicking up. Bring down the highlights. Bring down the contrast. Still looks a bit yellow, so we're gonna add a little blue to it to make it less yellow, and we're going to play with the magenta to get rid of the green. And that is her main shot. Now you can see she's got some kind of dirt or leaves or something on her kneecap. You can get rid of those if you want. Just helps the photo to look a lot better. Okay, so in this part of the lecture, I'm going to go over some more ideas on how you edit, how you work through the images that you've created to, come up with your pick, your best of your images. Um, so, when I do a shoot, I I use a simple idea of creating um, three scenarios around one, two, or three places. So when I say that, I mean, you know, I'll I'll shoot three different ideas around the area that I'm working with. So for Monica, um, I shot in three separate areas. I shot her inside the studio, which is what you see here. I shot her just out front of the studio, which is what you see here. Um, and I moved over to the left. So this and this area are just like about 8 feet apart, 8 to 10 feet apart, I should say. And because Monica had, spent time in her gallery on the night of the riots trying to stop people from breaking into her space and looting it, I felt it was very important that I shot her in front of the graffiti that went up after the riots had occurred, and they had this new face to everything. So this space is about 10 feet away from the other space, and then this space um, where someone did the uh, stenciled image of George Floyd, the man whose death created all this anger, momentum, energy that unleashed the riots. So I thought it was also fitting that she be photographed in front of this thing, which was right around the corner from, not around the corner, but 20 feet, at the most 30 feet from her door. So those were the three scenarios I worked out with her. With Julie, I photographed her in her space, which um, is a really interesting setup. It's a tiny space. Um, she is a small woman, like 5'1", and her space is small. It's tiny, and so I felt like a giant trying to move around in there. It was really tight. It was really strange to try to shoot in there because there was just so little room for me to work around. So I shot her inside and then outside in two different areas of the outside space. So this is the patio area right in front of her door. Um, let's bring this up. Add a little contrast to that. Bring down the highlights so that wall isn't so crazy blown out. And bring down the white again so that that white wall is more manageable. Okay, and so yeah, shot her in front of this patio space right in front of the door. And then like 10, 15 feet away from that space is this area that I shot her in. This one's way out of focus. Like the energy of this, but it's also out of focus, so I wouldn't use that. So it's between that. This is also an interesting profile. This one is just not a very complimentary photo to her. I don't like how the angle that her face is at this in this space, and then how the branches look. So this works better. this works better. So there are those of her, and then of Linda. Let's see. I got also more of Monica. I think there's some interesting stuff happening. You know how expressive her face can get, but in this one it doesn't work as well because what happens is now this eye looks like some crazy deformed thing. Um, this one works a little if you crop in here just a bit and create a bit more tension um, between her face and the edge of the frame, and then cropping out the top space here. This creates a more interesting image out of that one because now the George Floyd presence is looking over her shoulder, and there's something really quite interesting about that. This works out quite nicely with just the graffiti piece in the background and the words popping out, and the fact that she is so animated in her speech and gestures and so forth. Let's see, you've seen that one. That one's a no. That one's okay. I also played, when I shot inside, I played with the space, leaving a lot of open space, leaving a lot of, as they would say, this area to her left would be called negative space, and this image would employ the rule of thirds, which is, I don't, there's one thing I don't talk about a lot when it comes to composing portraits. There's ideas like the rule of thirds, and there's in different photo classes you've heard different ideas about composition, and I don't talk about those ideas so much as compositional rules because I think they're kind of silly formulas to remember. What I like to think about and what I like to talk about is how you use the space in a frame. How much negative space you have, how you lay out the person within that space, how you move the eye around. And so I like using space in such a way that I move your eye in different directions. And that's why I like this one. I think this one makes for both, it can be both an interesting supplemental shot, and it can also be a really interesting main shot. It's kind of daring to not see the person's face in a full frontal pose let's think of this as the cover. It's an interesting idea, or this is an interesting idea to see her face in this way on the cover, sort of a 3/4 thing happening with all this space. Because you're used to this idea for a cover shot, or something like this, where you see the front of the face. Playing around with the profile, this is more of a supplemental shot, but a daring art director, or daring graphic designer can make this image really work as the lead image on the shot, or the cover image, as I should say. I brought in some other images of Linda, not those. Let's see, where are they? Okay, you've seen that one. You've seen that one. Now, this one works as a supplemental. This one can work as a supplemental, but in this shot, it's more about Bubbles than it is. She's an accessory to the goat. So this one can work as a cover shot, and this one too. This one definitely works as a cover shot. And then what else do I have? You saw that. This one doesn't work in either way. You wouldn't use this one at all because she looks in sort of discombobulated, and the goat looks like it's a little in distress. This one, kind of the same thing. It's not really working. This one works better. This this setup is the milking machine that the goat is in. So the goat would move forward a little more, and it would eat some feed out of a thing on the other side of that. Of it would eat out of something on the other side of this, and then the machine would be hooked up to it to milk it. This one is would be interesting as a supplemental shot. You've got the goat's butt in the center of the shot. So I don't know how much that is really helpful. And then this one works really well, I think, as a main shot because you've got the goat doing its thing, eating its feed. She looks quite interesting sitting on the milking bench. There's this white material that just pops into the frame as a space. It's much more interesting to see the whole space, to see all the stuff that she's dealing with. This one would work out cool if it wasn't so out of focus. I can't do anything with that. And there's more shots of Linda, but I just wanted to show you those to give you an idea of how the process I go through to come up with the images that work. So what I want you to think about, is main image and supplemental image, identifying them both. Also, what I want you to remember in this is that you're getting a statement from your subject. You're asking them to say something about what they do or who they are or how they present themselves. You get to make this documentary portrait about anyone you deem interesting. You just have to write a statement prior to shooting and say, this is the person I'm choosing to photograph. They are the best yarn collector in the group of yarn collectors I know. They're the top yarn collector, or they're the top Pokemon player. Whatever it is, you get to decide what's interesting, and then you go about the steps of creating said shot. I'm loading some stuff up on Canvas that talks about Lightroom, talks about Photoshop. What I want you to remember, though, is that throughout the class, this class is more about how you approach the idea of portraiture, how you approach the idea of making images of people, how you approach the idea of composing people. These are the things that I want you to think about. These are the big ideas that I want you to indulge in. I also want you to remember that almost everything you do in this class will be available light. There's no big worry about using strobe or grabbing lights or anything like that. You're using the light that's around us. And so the image is about how you compose it and how you think through the content that you're trying to create. All right, so in this one, I'm going to give you an idea of how to present this thing. So here's here's my thought on how this should work for you. Let's say, all right, let's say you're going to use this image of Linda as your main image, right? So what we're going to do is we've got the image in Lightroom. Let's bring up, because it's a little dark in this space, let's bring up the exposure a bit. Let's do a little, bring the contrast up a bit, give it some bite. Let's bring down the highlight just a bit. And what we can also do in this one is use the gradient tool and click on that rectangle and bring this over here, because I find that area just a bit bright, and we can bring down the exposure just a bit. Okay? And so we bring down the exposure over there, and it helps us to focus our attention a little better on Linda. Okay? So we bring that down a little. Let's back out a little, like right about there. Okay? That's good. And so now, boom, your eye is on Linda. And then we're going to go back to that tool again. We're going to bring it across. Bring it across right here. And we're going to bring this exposure down on this material a bit more. Okay, bring that contrast. Bring that shadow up so it doesn't look quite as dark on that wall right there. And boom. Now look at what your eye does. This white on the right isn't so white anymore, and this area on the left isn't so bright anymore. So now your eye focuses in on the main subject, which is Miss Linda. And then the goat is secondary here. Bubbles is secondary. We know Bubbles is there, but Bubbles ain't the thing. There's a little thing right here on her arm. So we're going to grab this brush, this cloning brush. We're going to lower it by clicking on the bracket and making it smaller and just cloning that out. Okay? And then we're going to clone out this little thing right by her hair and this little thing over there. Just get rid of these little things that serve no purpose. All right? And so now, boom, we're good. We like how her shirt looks. I mean, she's a farmer, so it ain't gonna look pristine. But we like how it looks. And now we're gonna go, we're all right, like, we're cool with this image. I'm going to add just a little clarity to it, so that brings up her a little bit more. So for the final presentation of this idea, I would like you to create a document in Photoshop with the two images, and I'll show you the workflow for that. As I've mentioned before, I created a document, or I always have a folder on my desktop that I just put whatever I'm working in Lightroom into, just as a holding station. That's part of my workflow that I just use for almost everything I run through Lightroom. Sometimes I'll move all the photos that I'm going to use to a specific folder. But a lot of times I put stuff into this X folder that's a temporary holding place, and then I'll distribute it somewhere else, and that's just my thing. But for this, what we're going to do is this image of Linda and Bubbles, we're going to use this as the main image. So we're going to go in Lightroom, we're going to go File, Export, and our specific folder is X on the desktop. We're going to size this at 8.5, by 6.5. We'll leave it at 300 pixels per inch and hit export. Okay, that is exporting. And a little bar up on the left shows you that that is happening. When the bar goes back to gray again, it's done. We're going to now choose the next file, and I've decided this will be the supplemental shot. So we're going to go File, Export on this. And this size, we're going to change this. It's going to be 6.5 wide by 4.5 high. Okay? Those are our two sizes. Export that to File X. And then we're just going to reduce Lightroom for now. We're going to go to Photoshop, open that up, go File, New Document. We're going to go with an 11 wide by, 14. We're going to go with a 14 wide by 11 high at 300 pixels per inch document. It's just a white document in Photoshop. We will open up the X file, bring over the bigger image, the larger image, and move it just over to the side here. You could set this up in whatever way works for you. Double click, get rid of those moving bars, go back to File X, grab the smaller image, move that over, and let's move it down here. I don't have enough room, so I'm going to use the Move tool and move the larger image up a bit. Going to move the smaller image just a bit. And this is just a basic kind of design idea. Next, we're going to go and click on the Type tool, the horizontal Type tool, and we're going to create a type box because I don't know how many of you used type in Photoshop. Let's just hit, I don't know what the heck that is that popped up. But anyway, I don't know how many of you have used the type tool in Photoshop, but you have to create a box before you do any typing. So you create the box, that's what we have there. Then you go to the fonts and you pick whatever you want. I'll just go with American Typewriter for this demo. We've got American Typewriter, it's regular at 12 points. Over here in this little box, you can choose whatever color you want your font to be in. So you do that by just simply clicking on it and picking a color from this color picker here. So right now it's red, let's go with a kind of cool green, hit OK. And then we click on the box, make sure it's active, and we start typing. What you're going to type is your name. So let's go Neil and Neil France, and you type in whatever the assignment is. So for this one, it's the documentary portrait. So documentary portrait. And you can type in the name of your subject, or you can make a little comment or whatever you want to. You're going to create this, and this is what you're going to upload to Canvas. You can, if you decide at any point there's something that you don't like the way you change things, instead of just erasing them, if you want, you can highlight it, change the size by, going to 14 points. That makes it larger. Once you've got it highlighted, you can change the type, you know, um, change the type. You can change the color because you've got it highlighted. So you can click on the color again and now go to red or whatever you want to. And so once you unclick, boom, there it is. It's now red. It's a different font. It's a different size. These are how you make your changes. And then you say file save as, and you save it wherever you're going to save it. And then this is what you would upload. So for now, we'll save to computer. It's on title. Let's doc project. And we're going to save that. I'm just going to save it to desktop. Where's the desktop? All right, I'll save it back in FileX. Okay, so I've saved it back to FileX. I got to save it as a JPEG because you're going to upload that to Canvas, and so you would have to upload it as a JPEG. So this is how you're going to turn in the assignment. Create a Photoshop document. Move your two images onto the document. You can, save them in whatever way it works for you, side by side. If it's side by side, I'm going to read it as the left image is the lead and the right image is the supplemental. Or you can simply, put main image, supplemental in the titles, however you want to do it. But this is what we're going to do to create the document that you upload to Canvas. All right? Hopefully, this lecture makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense, if something is amiss or I fumbled on something and you don't understand what I'm talking about, this is where you get to email me. This is where you get to send me a text. This is where you talk to me through Canvas. This class only works if we talk to each other. I am horrible at reading minds, and since I'm not looking at you in a classroom, it's even harder to read your mind. I can't read your mind through my computer. So, I can't read your mind, period. I'm not trying to. So talk to me. Let's talk to each other. And that way, we can figure out what works, what I've messed up on, what you're messing up on, and correct our individual issues. And, make for a good class. All right, let me know what you think. Bye now.